This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 258 is brought to us by ByBit. Crypto traders had a week. While the rest of the crypto world was panicking, because that's smart, crypto traders were taking advantage of it, and a lot of them were doing it on the best crypto platform in the world. That's ByBit, one of the largest, one of the most well-capitalized, absorbed the largest attack in human history, and with my link, you get crazy benefits on top of that. Go down to the show notes, click on the ByBit blog, make sure it's for you. At the bottom of that blog, you can click my link and get started. Crypto investors can make good money, but we have to wait. Crypto traders just make money all the time. And you may as well do this on the best platform in the world and get paid for it, because with ByBit membership has its rewards. It is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, and this episode is called Fire Sale Volume 2. I'm surprised I haven't had more than just one. I've only had one other fire sale episode, or at least an episode that was called that. And I looked, and it was all the way back in episode 8. Wow. Like, we're on 258 now. And so I went back and looked at the charts, and I said, okay, well, how did I do? Did I call the bottom? I didn't quite, no. Price in a lot of things dropped a bit more from there, and then bottomed out, and then went up. Which is really the best case scenario if you think about it, because we are already long-term investors. We don't need things to go back up right away. And when things bottom out and flatten, that gives us time to accumulate the cash to later deploy into the things we like to buy. And speaking of cash, let's talk about that real quick. When I did my episode talking about how I allocate my portfolio, I told everybody it was as close as I can get to 25% gold, 25% Bitcoin, 25% assets, and 25% cash. And I got a bit of pushback on the cash part at the time, saying that that was way too high of an allocation. Cash is trash. All cash does is go down. All things I was very much aware of. But I'm like, hey, look, man, there's going to come a time where you wish you had it. And there are times where the value of cash actually goes up. It's not often, but when it does, you're going to want to be around for that. Man, it's times like this. Now, I want to circle back around to why cash was so hated, especially back then. We will do that later. So just file that one away for a minute. Because we need to talk about the dump, especially the dump that happened this week. It was really just a continuation of the dump that's been happening. And it's so funny with these narratives. You have to really, either just be so contrarian you just believe the opposite of what people say on X, or just completely ignore it. Because with Bitcoin in particular, you've seen it. It'll wash out. And then all the people who think they're smart in the Bitcoin world will come in and say, well, okay, there's no sellers left. It's bottoming out. And then price will go up a little bit, and they'll say, okay, this is the move back up. We've seen the worst of it. And then they're wrong. And during this last washout, they must have been wrong like 8 or 9 different times. And then they just keep saying the same thing. But what we know here, because we stand on the shoulders of giants, the actual smart investors like Rick Rule, when we understand that the market can stay irrational much longer than these people can stay solvent. We can stay solvent because we diversify. And we often like to buy things when they're cheap, especially things like altcoins, which dumped even further. The poor Bitcoin people didn't have anything to really hang their hats on, so the only things they could say is, well, this just goes to show that there's only one Bitcoin, because altcoins were dumping even worse. And the rest of us were like, well, yeah, we know. They often dump worse and they often pump harder. But I wanted to talk about altcoins, especially this episode. Because we do particularly like to buy those when they're cheap, and only when they're cheap, because it takes a lot of the risk out, because these are very risky things. Blockchain is the future of finance. We want to be in on it. The adoption phase has already happened, and there's still a lot more to happen there. Now it's just really a matter of putting it in motion and having a lot of these things become the rails and the applications for how technology is going to operate for the next 20, 30 years. But the waiting period can be very frustrating, so there's 2 things you always must do when it comes to altcoins. 1, buy them when they're cheap. Buy them when they're hated. And I think you guys are finally starting to get it, because everywhere I've looked, when it comes to you guys, so comments, emails, Discord, like, you guys are buying. Enthusiastically, too. Like, you guys get it. Sentiment in the altcoin space overall could not be worse, but you guys have turned into true contrarians, and it just warms my heart so much. So for anybody who is new or just still doesn't quite get it, then the way we buy things, it just depends on what it is, right? If it's better money, like gold, Bitcoin, if you really want to go up the risk curve and go things like Litecoin, we just buy whenever. It doesn't matter. We don't have to buy them when they're cheap. We're just transferring our money from inferior money, which is fiat, into better money. And there's no bad time to do that. You're going to get yourself in trouble if you sit there and try to get cute and time those things out. To where with most other things we buy, there is some room to be a bit more agile and a bit more savvy. And with altcoins, you need to be both of those things, or you're just not going to make it. And the two things you really need to make sure you do if you're going to be in this altcoin game, well, there's three actually, but the two main things is to buy only when they're cheap and to make sure you're taking profit on the way. Now, the third thing I was going to add is make sure you have a lot of positions, because some of these will go to zero or close enough to it to where it's not going to be worth it anymore. You have to accept that. Bitcoin maxis will say 99% of altcoins are going to go to zero. They're actually right. But by numbers alone, that means there's going to be anywhere from 50 to 100 that are going to make it, and you definitely want to be on board with the ones that make it. But again, you have to be savvy here, and part of that is taking profit on the way. Those of you who fail to do this really wish you had done this during times like this. I don't know if you hear the dogs in the background, but they couldn't agree more. They get burnt all the time because they never take profit because their brains are smaller than ours. But for the rest of us, let moments like this be the perfect reminder. While you're buying these things, go to your spreadsheet or your paper notebook and write down when you will be taking some profit off of the table and then moving your stop loss to break even. This is so non-negotiable. You make all of your money after the investment, not before. Why people don't take this as seriously as they do everything else is just maddening to me. But take profit and move stop loss to break even is exactly what I did and what I do with all these altcoins. And then I often go on X and let people know when I take profit and move stop loss to break even. What I also try to do is let them know when price comes back and hits that break even level, and then I end up having to exit the position. Now this week, it happened 4 times. So I did not just go to X and mention it every time it happened. Instead, I will just simply take the time to do this now on the podcast. So yes, there are altcoins out there that if you've been with me long enough, you might associate me with these pretty heavily. And they are no longer in my portfolio. Please understand, not because I don't like them and I don't support them and I'm not bullish on them. Looking at my list, I'm very bullish on all 4 of these. But I'm even more bullish on being a disciplined investor. And that includes sometimes doing things you don't want to do. So I know some of you also don't know this. I have my entire portfolio up on the old No Nonsense Forex blog. If you just go to nononsenseforex.com, type in portfolio, it should pop up. And I'll be updating that blog right after I finish shooting. So if you want to see what all I do have, it will be right there. And so the 4 tokens I had to get rid of because I bought early, took profit, moved stop loss to break even, and now prices come back and hit that stop loss are Uniswap, SWI, AVAX, and Cardano. Can you imagine VP without Cardano? Like I was staking, I had to go in and unstake everything and cash out. But if you guys remember, I was in quite early. I was kind of in that 9 to 12 range. I bought a bit more, so it kind of creeped up to 15, 16. And then I took profit. I mean, that thing went all the way to $3.30. I took profit after $1. It ended up being about an 8x, 9x. But then I moved stop loss to break even long ass time ago. Never thinking we'd get back there, but we did, which is a huge boon for buyers. But sometimes you have to part with the ones you love because sentiment's just really bad right now, especially in ADA where they're having internal problems. So once that washes out, let's hope it does. You guys need to be following Charles Hoskinson on X if you're not. You can kind of see this happen in real time. Yeah, but we dedicated an episode to ADA late last year, and we showed there's still a lot there. And at these prices, it's worth pulling the trigger on. Now, will I be doing that? Well, not right now, and I'll tell you why. It's because there was another episode we did, episode 242, close to it maybe, called Generational Crypto Stocks. And that is where I am focusing currently. That's where I've been focusing and trying to build positions there. And again, right now is a great time to do that. And once I do this, then I will take a look at the board, see where the value is, and then decide from there. And you guys will know about it. I've been aiming for as close to full transparency as I can with my crypto positions. And so I'll make sure I will mention them, and I will update that blog post accordingly as well. But what's kind of cool about this is, well, for a couple reasons. I actually didn't break even on a couple of these. I was actually plus because I stake some of these. I don't stake Uni or SWI, but I actually took I actually closed out my AVAX position at a bit of a loss, but it was actually a gain because I'd been staking AVAX on Coinbase for years. And you guys know I've been staking at double-digit percentages on ADA, but I also bought a bunch of NFTs with ADA, and so that pretty much canceled each other out in the end. So that's nice. Just goes to show that getting yield from these altcoins is one of the greatest things about them. And you should do it smartly and safely the moment you buy them. There's very little reason not to, and it makes a difference. Crypto and blockchain is the future of finance, and there are so many great advantages to them, and you should be taking advantage of everything you can. Now, there are certain tokens that never quite got to my take profit levels, so I still have a few tokens that are considered losses, but I like them all. We're actually going to have an episode pretty soon on one of them. And it's just a matter of sitting back and waiting, which we already know how to do here. Just please don't forget the take profit part. I feel like less of you are on board with that all the way, at least the way you should be. And one of the reasons people aren't, and this is really the crux of what I wanted to talk about this episode, is you guys see how crappy sentiment is right now while we're at these lows or very close to it? I want you to remember it, because it always happens during bear cycles like this, and people get way too caught up in it. And for that reason, they don't buy. Conversely, anytime sentiment is euphoric during the highs or near the highs, people buy way too much into it, and for those reasons, they never take profit. Both mentalities are stupid. Look at Bitcoin. Every time Bitcoin runs, everybody says it's about to go to $1 million this year. I just went back and looked at a post on X that I put back on April 19th. It showed how you had all these predictions for end of year 2026, the price of Bitcoin. And it showed about 12 different groups and people, and the lowest prediction was Citigroup at a $126,000 Bitcoin price by the end of 2026. The next lowest was 148,000 was the second lowest prediction. And I go on there, I'm like, yeah, I'm taking the under, guys. And every time I do that, I'm never wrong, because you have to recognize sentiment during peak bull cycles and peak bear cycles. These mushy middle people are out of control with their inabilities to predict anything. And then other mushy middle investors fall for it. And that's often why these moves are so dramatic. While we, contrarians, simply just wait for these moments to happen, and then we do the opposite. Now, Bitcoin's not the best example because you just buy Bitcoin whenever. But you get the idea, right? All of these altcoins are going to zero, just like they were, 4 different times in the past 7 years. And then as soon as this cycle reverses, it's going to be Ethereum to 10,000 talk all over again. And it's going to be wrong. And as soon as you start hearing that, you should look at your spreadsheet and say, hey, am I getting close to my take profit levels? Because you might be. And this will be a very good reminder. But the same sentiment also goes for cash. Don't forget that. Everybody repeats the same things, and they're not wrong. Cash is trash. It does nothing but go down long term over time. And you need to diversify out of it as much as you can. All correct. But if you noticed, when this sentiment was the loudest was right when or close to when I put that allocation episode out. And that's when I was getting pushback on my cash allocation. Because if people are like, VP, that should be zero or just enough to pay bills. And I'm like, I get what you're saying, but don't let this narrative swallow you up. The narrative is correct, but there's a time and a place. And right when the narratives start getting too out of control is when you typically see the turn. Are we near the turn right now? I don't know. It's not my job to be a mushy middle predictor and call tops and bottoms. I kind of hope it's not, because I need to get my allocation in for these crypto stocks and then hopefully get some great bargains on altcoins. Because I like a lot of these tokens and I still want them in my portfolio. So we'll see how that plays out. Back in the day, it was easy. If I wanted something, I could just go ahead and get it. But as you guys know, and as I've talked about a little bit, I'm trying to kind of set up the next 10, 15 years of my life. Everything's going just fine, but I'm like, well, what if it doesn't someday? Let's diversify away from the things that are already working just in case they don't. And a lot of these things take cash, so I don't quite have the agility buying-wise I had in the past, but that's fine. If I can't scratch the itch now, but I can scratch it later, still get scratched. But that's what's going on in the altcoin world. That is what's going on in my world. I wanted to share this with you. And who knows how long this bear cycle will last, but we will certainly be here every step of the way here at the 10-Minute Contrarian podcast because we love times like this. Because while everybody else is spontaneously combusting, we are buying with both hands because for some reason it seems strange to say during times like this, but we are not crazy. The people panicking are crazy. We just like being early.